Welcome back to Across the Table Podcast. It has been a summer, pretty much. We've been on summer break.
When was the interview with Scott, which was our last one? That was May?
Maybe May. Okay. Maybe.
We've had a bit of activity in the interim, but, we're back with the podcast, and it's about time.
So glad to be back, and I just want to give a couple shout-outs and thank yous to Scott Williams and First Christian Church Pleasant Hill, because they are allowing us the use of their facilities for this, and even today. I'm not going to say anything's concrete, but there are strong leans that we don't have to be a setup and tear down podcast anymore. So I am so excited about that.
We got a home.
A couple other things. You're going to notice that we aren't wearing masks and all that stuff. Let me explain why really fast so that nobody gets triggered. Boom, hand sanitizer. So we spent...
That's not it.
About half an hour to 45 minutes sanitizing and just cleaning the everything that we're even in contact with. Hand sanitizer regularly. Kyle and I have both been tested. By the way, this is Kyle Logan, but we'll get to him in a second.
Yes.
We've both been tested. We both come back negative. Dylan's been in self-quarantine.
I have not left my house since August 22nd.
Yes.
So I'm good.
So we're good. We also have special air filters in this room running to help minimize all that stuff. So we've taken every precaution to just feel comfortable between all three of us to not be wearing a mask. As well. Plus, he's my son, but we'll get into that a little bit later. It's complicated. That was really fun. I love that summer.
Before I hide this again, would anybody like some hand sanitizer?
I'm going to do it just because I want it on camera. Let people know we're serious.
All right.
This is also exciting for us because this is the first video podcast we have.
Finally.
We have a green screen, which is great, and it's going to be a lot of fun to edit and throw up links and everything else. Artwork done in the thumbnail and in the background, I believe, is going to be by Katie Berkoff. And so we'll have a link to her Instagram down below. So without further ado, I want to just jump in and just introduce my good friend, mentor, fellow coworker, bandmate in for a while, Kyle Logan. Kyle Logan is just an incredible guy, as you guys will all soon and regularly, hopefully, discover. We just got to have a really, that was probably like 20 or 25 minute conversation, just getting to know each other, sharing, and just having a good time.
We've never met. So this is the first
time. The banjo man can meet the rock star. You're connected.
I'm like the antithesis of rock music.
So, do you have anything you want to ask off the bat, or just like you want to just dive into this? I'm game for whatever.
No need to wait. Let's go ahead. All right, cool. You guys have the history. Why don't you begin, Kyle Giffin?
I'm going to just quickly explain why he's my son, because I think that's super important. Not really important, but it's fun. So obviously we're both named Kyle, and we have played together in... I'm just going to say bands, even though it was kind of like...
Musical ensembles.
Accumulations of instruments with people standing on, behind, or in front of them.
Boom, right there.
There we go.
That's the perfect way to phrase it. And we were at summer camp one year, and we were playing because we were trying to decide who's the superior Kyle, because we both worked at the same church at the time, and we needed to hash that stuff out.
I've never had that happen to me. I'm Dylan. I'm always the only Dylan.
Except for Yard House.
Oh, yeah, but I never worked a shift with that guy. And also he was inferior because he formatted his resume so poorly.
I remember
there were like typos.
He was inferior.
It's like he did pipping. He laid pipping in construction sets. Or pipping. Construction sets? Pipping. Piping.
Pipping. Yeah. In construction
pipping.
sets.
Sets, yeah.
Pipe. Okay.
He pipped and laid the pipe. And so while we were there, we played a game of Speed, and we played to see who would be superior. Kyle, I won.
I'm sorry, what is Speed? The card game?
Speed, the card game, okay. Yeah. I won, and I was like, all right, great. I'm top dog. I'm top Kyle. His wife stepped up, who was really, to her credit, was really good.
She's great.
Speed player.
Way better at cards than
I got lucky. I think that's all it was, but it was ordained through the universe, and I beat her. I remember I beat her by 4 cards. I threw my card down. They were just about to have their firstborn child, not son, firstborn child. And so I remember throwing my cards down. The deal was double or nothing. If she won, he'd be superior Kyle. If I won, I'm the patriarch of their family. So
the grandfather.
I became a grandfather, and I was super, super happy and stoked about that. So Ever since then, he's been my son. It's my son on Facebook too.
The joke has never died. Oh yeah, we
formally got it.
formally made that. Oh, I forgot.
No, I saw it because I was going through your Facebook non-creepily trying to get a photo. Oh gosh, this sounds so creepy.
It's a little stalkery. That's actually what Facebook stalking is.
Yeah, it's
which
true.
is just a form of stalking.
Yeah,
Definition.
Just dig in there. But so we've been friends for a long time. Kyle's been great. He's helped me through and led me through tons of just trial and tribulations, difficult breakups in my life. Yeah.
One of these days, we're going to have an episode where you do not mention that.
Never. I'll always be alone.
Never.
And we always got to reference that.
Why? Okay.
But Kyle, I mean, I know you have had, obviously, I know, and as we've been able to talk about, you've had a lot of experience with just like, whether it be the nonprofit Art Accelerator, right?
It's Art Accelerator.
Art Accelerator. Oh gosh, yeah, I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm uneducated. But I mean, what are you doing now? Who are you? Like, what is your history? And just, I mean, where are you now as a person? I guess briefly, or however long you want to take.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I wouldn't say you're uneducated. You've probably got more college credits to your name than I do, just so you know. Just so you know.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll compare notes someday.
If you have more than a semester, then you probably don't know. No, I don't know exactly how many college credits I have now because when you go through the carpentry apprenticeship program, those are accredited courses. Mm-hmm. So, I'm Kyle Logan, and
you're a rock star.
I've had a very broad life so far.
Yeah.
I've done music professionally. I have been a pastor, worship arts pastor specifically. I have been a part of the foundation of 2 nonprofits. So Art Accelerated was the second. I did one. I worked alongside one called Hub Music in Tahunga, where I'm from. And that was really cool. Rick Van Zoofen, one of the earliest mentors I ever had. Instrumental in me moving forward and feeling any sort of confidence. Right. He was a big part of that. And aside from the nonprofit world and the church experience, lots of professional experience, much like you guys in the areas of service and all those different industries. And then, a bit of this and a bit of that. Currently a union carpenter, and I work all over the Bay Area. I specialize in doors, frames, and hardware, which, believe it or not, is incredibly stimulating. I mean, really, it's better than
I know. I met some shop guys in my theater stuff, so yeah, I got you.
And it's better than pip laying. I got to be honest.
Pip laying is just a travesty.
So that would be, the overall thing. And then you asked what I'm doing now, and for a while, it was like I'm going to try to record another album.
Yeah, which you are, by the way. This is happening. I don't care what he says.
Let's talk about
on the record
in the long term.
So hang on. Well, how many albums have you got? I've seen 2 of them on YouTube or Spotify.
So there's 3 on Spotify.
Okay.
One is a 4-song EP, and I'll sort of get to that because that's a real fun creative endeavor. But the first was a sort of self-titled thing. Well, it wasn't self-titled, but it was a collection of different...
the greatest album ever made.
It was a collection of music that I worked on over the time period where we were recording record labels and doing a couple different things. And it was actually, the release of it coincided with my decision to go towards ministry as opposed to secular music. And so I swung hard in that direction and released that as like I want to say the right thing here, because it wasn't like I was not going to do music in that way, because I've done all sorts of stuff since, but it was a good recognition of those songs and the way that I had wanted to progress up until that point. Yeah. And we had reached some pretty mountainous things.
Yeah.
Anyway, all that to say, there was that, and then going into ministry, I didn't record very much. We got to a point where we did this Christmas EP that's like totally indie production. It was supposed to sound like a bunch of people holed up in a cabin just doing Christmas songs.
That's fun.
So left in a lot of stuff that
you worked with that, didn't you?
Yeah,
you've mentioned that one to me, and we'll link it in the description.
And then we were going to do a second one, but we just ran behind on time because I couldn't figure out how to play without a metronome.
You're the drummer.
In that instance, I've gotten better.
Okay.
So it's
you are the metronome.
It's good. Well, I mean, It'd be
Passed
great
on.
if that's the way it worked. But, yep. And then after that, I recorded this like really, really intimate project called "Hear My Heart," and it was cool. Basically, I sat in a rickety wooden chair, and for the first song, for the first track, I sang through a harmonica, so it sounds like I'm doing a vocoder effect, and it's not. And the whole thing is live, and each song was recorded start to finish, back to back, with no editing whatsoever.
Okay.
And that includes pitch or anything like that. And it was hard because although I got very competent at delivering a good product live, it was a different environment, and you were used to a certain level of sterility when you record, and this had none of that.
Okay.
So like we leaned into that pretty hard, because during the recording of one of those, you can hear me audibly leaning forward and leaning backward in the chair. It created almost this like creaking wood as if you were on a ship sort of sound, which was like just, it was cool for the moment. Now I go back and listen to it, and I realize that anybody who doesn't know that it was recorded that way would just go, wow, this guy's voice it's got some good moments, but it really here and there. And it was the artistic decision I could have delivered much better had I recorded the guitar and voice separately, and had I done it like a real.
But would it? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Would it have been as authentic?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was very much the point.
Yeah.
So anyway, I zoom in only on that just to say that if anybody goes on and listens, I would hope that they wouldn't listen to Understated. And
No, listen to Understated.
He's super clean here, and then,
Don't ask
wow, he's
for
real
forgiveness
Okay.
before anybody's giving you any grief.
There you go. Right on. Well, as an artist, you want to unpack it.
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
People make assumptions, and it's always fun to do.
You know what? It's art. They're allowed to interpret it however they want.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Kyle, you're about, I'm going to say 2.5, but it's 3. You're a father of 3, soon to be 3.
Soon to be an official 3.
Yeah. And I remember I want to say it was the day Ollie was born or the day after. It was the day, because I brought you in and out.
Yeah.
That was so great, and he was just a total ball of joy, and I still have that photo on my Instagram, so
yeah,
it was really good. How old is Indy now?
She's gonna be 6.
Wow.
She's gonna be 6 this month.
That's right.
Happy birthday.
That's my granddaughter, so I better get her something
better.
good. Like what? I know they're homeschooled. They have been.
Yeah. Prior to Corona too.
Yeah.
They're
So you were ready. You were ready to go.
We were so prepared. No,
We just had that foresight.
that was
Oh,
the
boy.
goal.
Yeah.
When we got married.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um,
And I do want to say, but I do have to say, my wife is, if not at least one of the best educators of early childhood development that I've ever seen. And one of the things and I mean that because that was my opinion before we ever got married. And I mean that because that was a foundational goal for me as a young man, was to have the sort of lifestyle or work ethic that would provide for a woman the ability to stay home if she wanted, and hopefully that she would want to.
right.
And I lucked out in that I married a woman who I knew was going to be a great educator because she already worked in that capacity. And one of the things that we totally love about our current circumstance as homeschooling parents of kids in their age is my daughter can read now, and it's because my wife taught her.
Yeah.
And there's something incalculably good, incalculably,
It's
I know what you're saying.
We're following along.
there's just something that's like so good about that. And it's something that all of us take for granted, but it's something that she'll use the rest of her life. And it's amazing to say, oh man, you taught her how to do that.
Yeah.
You brought this person into the world and you gave them the skills to be in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been really fun to just, over the last, obviously with Corona, but over the last couple of years, we've both gone different paths. But it's been really, really cool to see, at least on the social media front, just all the time that your wife obviously spends with your kids, and just their growth and development, and Oliver looks nothing like you. And it's really interesting. I loved what Tawny had to post a couple days ago about being afraid that someone's going to think you kidnapped him when you two go out in public. So
It's true.
But dude, Ollie's been so great. He always has a smile on.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. And that wasn't apparent that was going to be the case. He was a tough kid.
Yeah.
I mean, he had colic, which if you don't know, and if the listeners don't know, That's basically all that is a diagnosis that says, yeah, your baby cries about 3 hours a day and we just don't know why.
Wow.
And so, and usually continuously, not like, half hour here, half hour there. More just like, it's going to be a 1 hour block preceded by 15 minutes and then perhaps another 1 hour block.
What?
More, less, we don't know. But he was tough. And to my wife's credit, you know, she managed really unbelievably well. And it wasn't apparent that he was going to be as happy of a boy as he became. And he is one of the happiest kids ever. And it's great.
Nice. Sorry, I was just checking some sound level stuff, but as long as it's showing up on there,
we're good.
Doesn't really matter. I was gonna say of your 3 kids, since the last one isn't here yet.
Yes.
Of the 2 kids, I'm not gonna ask you to pick a favorite because that'll be on the record. I'm not gonna ask you to do that.
Yeah.
Which one was, and because you have a girl and you have a boy, which one was so far has been more difficult, not in them, but just as you have developed as a father?
I think what I hear you asking is which one has been the most challenging to parent.
Yes.
For me personally.
Yes. We can circle back to that.
No. I want to give you an answer and a good one. My daughter is way more independent.
Oh yeah, I know. Indy's amazing.
Fiercely independent, and
she gets that from her mom.
And that presents its own and that presents its own unique challenges. And then my son, a different type of, I wouldn't say dependence, because you know one day in the digital world he's going to watch this. Yeah, and he's going to be like,
find it
20 minutes.
Dad, it's time to fight.
And I don't want to say, great thing to tell. We were talking about masculinity. I'm going to talk to you about me and him fighting later on. It's great. Nice. Really proud of it, but he wasn't. It's not as if it was. It's not as if he had a dependence, because all children are dependent.
Right.
It was that he was less independent, and I would say that was confusing to parents because we only had one kid, and our experience said this, and like every other parent of one child, oh, you know everything, and then your second child comes along and is like,
completely different,
tricked you. You don't know anything.
Opposite. It's okay when the third.
So that girl, all I would say is that those were the two challenges that were unique to either, and I can't say that one was harder than the other.
Right.
They're just both unique, and our next baby will be a boy.
Oh, that's right. Oh, wow. Yeah. Another grandson. It's going to be wonderful.
So, sorry, how old is your son that is in the world already?
Yeah, he's 4 years old.
He's 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna have two young boys at once.
Yeah.
My cousin who lives in Maryland has 2 sons right now. The youngest he's 2 something. The other has just learned to walk. Good luck.
Yeah.
It's okay. He dealt with. We got to work with youth ministry for a bit together too. So if you can do that,
is that the same though? Is that the same? Or working with kids versus parenting? Working with kids versus parenting.
I have a masculinity story.
You're allowed.
I'm not sure if we'll get in trouble for it.
You're allowed to. I would say the methods of discipline are different. The methods of discipline are different.
Understandable.
And I'm making no confession there. There's nothing behind that other than a fact.
Yeah, but you just know that when you're taking care of somebody else's kid, whatever you do, it's the wrong thing, and you're going to hear about it.
Yeah.
And it's going to
especially in that position. Like.
You know what would surprise you though, because there are times when you get a parent and they're like, "You're gonna put the hurt on him, right?" And you're like, "For God's sake, no!
Why?
I'm not gonna put the hurt on him."
Right.
That's your job.
But they want you to be. Some parents want external sources of toughness for their kid because, for a lot of reasons, maybe they feel like they can't, or maybe they have, but it hasn't worked, and so they think, well, if somebody else tries the tough love, it'll work better. I don't know. And I'm not going to pretend like there's any one simple reason. But there are parents who are like that, and I'm sure you remember them, who want you to be tougher on their kids or, straighten their kids out. And it's like, well, I'm going to give my best self.
Yeah.
And if your child responds, well, that's good.
Yeah.
And if they don't, I'm still going to give my best self.
Well, you've got a responsibility to the entire group, don't you?
Yeah. And, I mean, part of the other thing, too, with that is you had, an hour, 2 hours a week?
Yeah.
It's like there's only so much. When I say so much, it's really so little that you can do effectively for I mean, you can do a lot. Don't get me wrong. I'm not making an excuse.
It's true
but
both
like,
ways.
yeah,
It's true both ways. Yeah.
but generally, whatever you're spending more time with, or what they're open with, is
Well, I
what's
mean,
going to be the greater influence.
Nobody really ever learns something the first time. It's always the reinforcement.
Yeah.
So if you only see somebody for 2 or 3 hours a week, you're not going to instill something unless it's extremely powerful, unless you get to just keep it going.
There are those experiences that are one-off catalytic experiences.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
Absolutely
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
it's just
Yep.
I'll just leave it there.
We're gonna leave it there.
I mean,
What do you think, like, over the last 6 years? And I know, obviously, with Indy and Ollie being so different as kids go, as individuals, what has been your biggest change in you as in a father figure, maybe in a husband sense? Like, what change have you noticed in yourself, or how have you, does that make sense?
yeah. What's the biggest change, for better or worse? That's the question. I mean, are you saying what's the most positive change?
What change do you want to talk about?
Because I would say that when you zoom out, there's been an upward trend for me, right?
Yeah.
And that's the goal, is that no matter what happens along the way, that you would continue to get better over the long span.
Right.
Nothing really ever has that perfect upward continuous motion. So,
Except for these curls.
I mean, I haven't worked out in 7 months now, so
I was having a really, really positive memory earlier about us working out at the gym, back when you could go to gyms and work out.
Yeah.
And I was remembering early in the morning going in with you to the YMCA.
Yeah.
And we were working out together, and that was a really nice memory.
It was a lot of fun that we got to have. Great
So,
time.
but the question is, what's the biggest change that's occurred within me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a kid. And that has so many meanings behind it, and most of them are true. I'm not a kid,
Yeah.
You don't get to be a child. Or you shouldn't be a child if you're going to have children. And if you are, you better be ready to exercise that.
Yeah.
And I mean exercises and remove it from yourself, because it's healthy to experience childlike times with your kid.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we've instructed my daughter on is she'll try to bear your burden for you. And she'll be very concerned for you. And, there are times where we say, hey, it's not your job to make me happy. It's not your job to make sure Dad's happy.
Yeah.
And, it's because it's like she's I don't know, man. Children in negative situations feel obligated to parent their parents. And there comes a time in life where they do. There are times in my life where I feel like I can speak to my mother in a way that is paternal, in a healthy way.
Right.
And that, I think, should be the goal of every parent. But to not be the type of parent that needs their child to take care of them is a very, very lofty goal, and more complicated than it sounds.
Yeah.
And so I would say that I'm not a kid anymore, in a good way. And I never expected my kids to take care of me. And I've never expected my wife to necessarily take care of me. And I'm not that type of person. But I would just say that one of the things that I have learned is that, you don't get to be that way, even if you want to.
Yeah.
And you can't afford to with your children. You've got to be their parent. And you've got to care for them. So.
Wow, that's a lot. I like that, though. Don't be a kid. And that just, that, like you said, there's just so much in that can be unpacked and not assumed, because I don't want to put words in your mouth. But,
sure.
Definitely, I think, Indy is empathetic, obviously. She has that caring. And, I think a lot of, talking about the difference between, being paternal with your parents, having those moments where it's okay, versus having your kids take care of you. In all of our years of working with people, unfortunately, and even people I know maybe more instead of mentorship, just as friends, that's almost like their experience in terms of you could see it, you could hear it, you could sense it in that relationship about the parents needing so much from the kids, which everybody goes through rough patches. We were talking about that previously before the camera started rolling, about just some tough situations for us. Yeah. But, I think, what do you think it does, to a child when they almost, it's I wouldn't say forced, but like they feel the deep need and the strong desire to have to take care of a parent on some spectrum.
Yeah. What do I think that does?
Yeah.
That's what I hear you asking.
Yeah.
Yeah. It produces a number of different negative traits within a personality and destructive behaviors for an individual. And I do want to clarify right now, I'm not a credentialed psychologist or, these are slightly above armchair opinions. And I say that because as a ministry leader and as a credentialed pastor and all of those different things, you very much have a therapist role with the people who trust you. And you hear a lot of things from them. And you hear a lot of personal things from them. And you hear a lot of honesty. And I don't mean to say that everyone's honest with their therapist, because they're not.
Right.
And that's why therapy doesn't work sometimes. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason I think that therapy doesn't work. But that's a different story. I have observed both personally and professionally that the outcomes of a parent who needs to be parented by their children are that the child either grows up so quickly that they become unable to care for themselves and engages in a pattern of self-destructive behavior where they care more for other people than for themselves.
Right.
And inevitably, this isn't just a short-term, I don't take very good care of myself and I have low self-esteem or whatever the case may be, because there's a lot of reasons that they don't. But in the long run, this turns into resentment because a child that grows up in that environment will continue that pattern of behavior with friends and romantic partners, and it will encourage resentment in that person's life, and then that resentment will inevitably cause issues.
Yeah.
So caretaking in that way. And then there's the opposite way where you become hyper irresponsible in a reaction to that aggressive attempt at making you responsible.
Right.
And that's the Peter Pan syndrome. That's the refusal to accept any responsibility whatsoever, because people tend to slide into personality types pretty easy depending on what you thrust on them. So
it was actually something we were covering in our sociology class, but I think it's talking about the Peter Pan syndrome and not taking responsibility as a father, as a man, really. I feel like this is just my opinion of the world, and I think one that a few people share. Personal accountability and owning up to our own mistakes, our past, not trying to dwell in that, not trying to just soak and marinate in that.
Yeah.
But there is so much nowadays, and it's two extremes. It's a lot of, when we look at talking about cancel culture or something like that, a lot of people will drag up the past and refuse to, accept that people change. That
drag up the past, not to mend it, but to
be more destructive and malicious, I would say. I don't know if destructive is the right word.
So not, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think that anybody who does that typically is interested in discrediting the person that they're talking about.
And that's the wrong reason to do anything that's frankly disrespectful to the cause of grief in the first place.
Well, especially if you have grown and moved past that, will your past come back to haunt you or be confronted in some way? Absolutely. I mean, it happens to me. Even now when I look in the mirror, even stuff that nobody else knows that I know I've grown from or moved past, it's I still think about those things.
Yeah.
And am I ashamed of those things? I would say yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing to be, to feel negative emotions towards something that's happened in your past. It is if that's all you do.
Yeah.
But that's a healthy part of growth. Growth is not just the good. It's also taking the bad and mending it and becoming greater.
Absolutely. And with that, back to talking about, people dragging up the past, but there is also a fair amount of people, and we see this all the time, whether it be in workplaces. I'm not saying I know anything from your workplaces, but I know, in the workplace, whether it be on a job site, in a nonprofit, in food service or anything like that on the work site, there are people that don't take accountability just for their actions. And I think that's a base level of that. And then as we grow and mold, one of the things I find super frustrating is when people don't take accountability, they make excuses. And, it's one thing to have reasons, as we know. There's maybe the reason you're late today is because a tree in your neighborhood fell down and you physically could not get there.
Sure.
However, if every day you wake up and you know that there's traffic and you don't leave 15 minutes earlier, that's an excuse. That's a reason to fail, to be that. So I don't know. I just think that, there is that balance almost, because those are two of the extremes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I see a lack of personal accountability whenever I see it in leadership. It could be anything as simple as a guild in World of Warcraft. It could be as simple as I'm serious. Whole lot of drama there. It could be as simple as anything in restaurant industry or job site or even ministry. A lack of true transparency and accountability will just lead to destruction.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Of any organization.
You don't have to be responsible for everything, but you are responsible for yourself. You can make mistakes, own up to them, and try not to do it again. There we go. So let's move on. I believe the next topic is true masculinity versus toxic masculinity. First of all, what do you believe is true masculinity?
Do you believe there is true masculinity? Do you believe toxic masculinity?
That's a better question.
And this is the fun
let's start with one question at a time.
One question,
yeah. So is there such a thing as true masculinity versus femininity versus somewhere in between or outside of?
Oh, well, absolutely.
Cool.
I mean, I think that, anybody who would debate that, there's just a lot of reasons why they would. And historically speaking, there's a broad consensus for what constitutes a good man. Even if you want to play fast and loose with the definition of man, there are elements of the psyche that present as masculine and can be true in the sense that they're good for people as a whole. So I would say that, true masculinity exists. I don't know that I affirm. It depends on whose definition.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna have that discussion.
I would say I agree.
Yeah.
And for the reason that with the leaps that we have made in terms of gender identity over just the past few years alone, and how public that's become,
It's very public.
the ideas of genders,
Okay.
They have a foundation that people strive to meet this certain set of things, or they just feel that idea is a home to them, and so they gravitate towards the true masculinity, femininity, in between, outside, whatever that may be.
Okay.
So I believe that, yes, there is such a thing as true masculinity, and I do personally believe it is separate from toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think anybody who would try to fuse the two together, I mean, that's.
So I want to give you a moment to think.
Yeah.
Because I want to.
Because you haven't had your piece for the.
That's right. I haven't had my piece yet.
Come on.
Hear what I have to say.
I
want to talk about that toxic masculinity, and there is a difference, I believe, too, because I think. And I'm glad we're having this conversation because I feel like people do lump those together, and it's not even out of they actually think it's the same thing, as we were talking about before we started rolling. There's a lot of things we agree on, but the terminology hasn't been defined between us, so there's that breakdown in communication.
And we're in a transitory era anyway with this, because we're still, the definitions are constantly in flux, but this right now is a flashpoint in determining what does this mean now? How does this
right?
Yeah.
Well, people anyone can say I think one of the biggest things at least in my experience and in my world I live in, is, I hear a lot about toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And it's but that's all I hear about it. And the only other flip side of that is generally on a certain spectrum of people and individuals that have that, have a different viewpoint. And they're well, masculinity is this, this, and this. Yeah. And so I think that there are aspects of, there's just kind of these blurred lines. And I want to kind of bring those apart, because I personally believe, as we were having a little bit of this conversation, then we decided we wanted to keep it for this.
Yes.
I think that, as jockish as this is going to sound, I think toxic masculinity stems from beta males pretending to be an alpha male. And I mean that in the psychological sense and definition of the word, not.
Please define that so it's not just like, I'm an alpha, you're a beta.
An alpha male is someone who is socially and psychologically dominant.
And that's for any gender. That's not inherently gender, masculine. That's somebody who does take charge.
Yeah, you can be an alpha.
Yeah.
And so it's that. So when that's what I'm talking about there. I think it's somebody who is socially submissive but mentally dominant, or would like to think they are, pretending to be someone who is socially and mentally dominant. And so when you get that, and you get this essentially a weak-willed, poor excuse of a man, I am going just hard at this right now. That is where these men, I'm going to call them boys because they're not men, they're boys in my opinion, then abuse this kind of cartoonish form of masculinity into trying to bend and force the world and people around them, particularly women, to serve them and their worldview and their needs. Now, everyone has a worldview.
Absolutely.
And that's totally, that's a whole nother discussion of itself. But when your worldview is about manipulating people at the core root of it, and whether or not you want to admit that doesn't have anything to do with it. If your core masculinity is about forcing other people to recognize you as someone of prominence, power, or authority in whatever situation you're in, that's where I believe toxic masculinity starts to slip in. We look at people like Rambo. I would not consider him toxically masculine. I think it's a Hollywood, obviously a trope of masculinity.
It comes out of the history that has created this idea of toxic masculinity.
Right. And
I say we don't necessarily get into the history of that and what that affects today, or we're going to be here until tomorrow.
Yeah, we are. Never leave.
But what can we actually do now? And how do we define that now?
So that's my definition and piece on that. Sorry, I kind of took over that. Kyle, what do you have to say about that?
Okay, so you're handing me a gun, man. You're handing me a gun there.
I know.
So
that's my opinion of it. You can disagree.
Human beings can be toxic. If the toolbox that was handed you is a masculine toolbox, those are the tools you're going to use. Mm-hmm. We've both been in structures. We've all been in structures where there were masculine things that were used to create structure. Mm-hmm. Masculine tools used to create structure. Those can be good. Mm-hmm. They can be bad. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it can be simplified down to the alpha-beta conversation, only because you've seen me in circumstances become incredibly dominant. Psychologically, not always physically.
Right.
But probably physically, maybe twice. You've probably seen that. I don't know that you remember, but it doesn't really matter. I know that I've been a toxic human being, and I know that because I'm a male, it's manifested in some of those ways. I think that it's really complicated, and it oftentimes manifests best in the structure you're in. Whether you're a man or a woman, it obviously changes what you use to achieve your end, but it's the system that you're working in as well that does those things. Because God, and this is a well. See, there are social examples I could use, but I mean, it's all power play stuff, right? Because like you can walk into a circumstance, in my experience, where you're working with musicians who maybe don't have the skill set that you have, or they haven't worked with who you've worked with. And so you can kind of like pull rank on them, and you can say, oh yeah, I learned that from so-and-so, or oh yeah, I did, whatever. And is that toxic masculinity?
I wouldn't consider that.
It's not, but it is some sort of social, it's some sort of toxic social tool. And I think that men use the tools they're given, and they are a direct reflection of the health of the individual. And if that person is unhealthy, then it's going to come out in a certain way. If they're an aggressive male, it'll appear as toxic masculinity. If they're a passive aggressive male, it'll appear differently. And
I wouldn't necessarily. It would appear as a different form of toxic masculinity. I wouldn't say that it would not be so.
That's my point. Is it wouldn't be toxic masculinity if they were a passive person. He's saying that that they would manifest as an aggressive person, right? If they were a passive, and they were attempting to use
yes and no.
tropes.
I think that obviously everybody deals with anger or aggression like that's a natural part of really most people's lives.
This is a hard one.
It is. And that's why I love having this conversation. But I just mean as the concept of toxic masculinity, which is like, you don't cry, you don't do this, you don't do that. You don't. And yes, there's a lot of social training for that. But
that sort of thing exists because of the structure that has existed for how long?
Well, I think yes and no. Again,
well, it's not exclusive. I'm saying that we have this understanding, and we were born into it as our parents were, and as their parents were, and that goes back a ways, and that changes over time,
right?
A bit by bit, but largely it's because of that structure. It's male dominated.
But I wouldn't even consider that. I think it's because of people who poorly addressed or bring up the cartoonish version of masculinity. Because I believe you can be masculine and shed a tear. Just like the cop from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball.
I don't
suck
know
it back up.
It's
a great. I have to show it to you sometime. It's a great scene.
Cry, so you suck it. I think I understand.
Good archetypal moment. Yeah.
And then you get your. Okay, let me just break it down for you. Someone that I believe is an absolute masculine person, who I think if many people just looked at this person and tried to become him.
Is it The Rock?
No. I was gonna say John Jatoff.
Oh, so somebody
someone like that who is like, he.
I always feel like people. What's an example of positive masculinity? The Rock.
The Rock.
The Rock. Well, he's in everything.
He's positively masculine. I'll give him that.
He is undoubtedly.
But he also is a good example. So I'll let you continue, John Jatoff, because.
So I'm not going to get too far into that why. I would love to have him on and show people, and people that know him, I think, would generally agree.
Yeah.
I think that's a very strong.
He's healthy.
Male, healthy. He's not all these things to say, but that's what I would be as an example of a strong, true masculinity. And it's not because he's never said you can't cry. It's not because it's none of those things of like what is considered tough. Now, are those attributes maybe he wouldn't do? I don't know. I've never been in a situation where he'd have to cry before, so I don't know. But it's the concept of like, if you're a man, you don't cry, you don't do this, you don't do that, you can't have feelings, you're a robot. Yeah. And some men are like that. And you know what? That's fine. If that is like who you truly are and you just don't get teary-eyed, whatever.
The more you box it up, the more it bleeds out. And the more it bleeds out, the more you have this just repeating itself.
But there are some human beings that are genuinely less emotional than others.
But then they're not binding themselves up. That's just how they are. That's who they are.
Yeah.
When you do that to yourself, you are becoming an instrument of this problem.
But you can also have self-control and not want.
There's a difference between self-control and not self-restraint. I don't really know. I can't really think of a word, but like it's this idea of containing yourself too much to prevent other people from seeing weakness.
Oh, okay.
Right. And
so this is a hard one. This is a really hard one because you and I have known each other a long time, and you've seen my transition from a balanced individual to a hyper-aggressive individual, and I know that you know that.
That was an environment we had to be, though, because even I came into that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I have transitioned at different points in life to a hyper-aggressive personality type, and I think that oftentimes, I don't make any excuses for the negative parts of that. I really don't.
For yourself or that institution?
But see, that's no, for myself. I mean, I don't make any excuses. It's a personal accountability thing. I was unnecessarily aggressive at different times. Now, here's the really interesting thing. Construction has sort of taught me, specifically carpentry, has sort of taught me the healthy balance between those things. Because when I operated purely as an artistic personality, I was more on the softer side of things. I wasn't as aggressive. Then when I operated in a different social structure, I became hyper-aggressive, right? In order to, I don't know, man, I was dominant. That's just the way it was. And it felt normal and it felt natural. Going out of both of those circumstances into construction, man, it's really interesting. There's a code of ethics. There's an absolute code of ethics. It's like if I see a guy anywhere near my tools, and I mean, you know, resting his arm on my cart or something like that, it's totally okay and even expected for you to say, hey, can I help you? You shopping?
Yeah.
You know, it's like that field of work, you can do that. You don't do that with a colleague in a cubicle. You know, if they're near your stuff, you know, that would be considered aggressive in the workplace, in the office setting, right? But there's healthy elements of that in construction, whether you're a man or a woman, because there's women in construction and man, they're tough and it's good and it's okay and it's accepted. The social construct where, I hate that term. No. Out the window with that. Real quick. Let's nip that in the bud.
Okay.
The social structure you're participating in oftentimes sets the markers and sets the yard line for what is what's aggressive and what is not. And there are healthy levels of aggression in one place that are totally unhealthy in another, and that's okay. And they're going to manifest differently based on the individual, their gender, biological or otherwise, and hopefully I didn't just murder myself by using those words.
No.
I don't know.
That's what it's our podcast.
I don't believe so, but I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
My wife instructed me to not get in any trouble while I was here. Don't say
What's the worst thing? So let's talk about Hitler.
You know, he's a safe one.
That's true. It's really not really that polarizing. It's just
not
bad.
Anymore. You get in more trouble talking about Trump than you do about Hitler.
That's fair. Definitely.
Yep.
Definitely. Yep.
I think everybody can agree about Hitler.
Yeah. Dude, if you
that's
say
the
Trump,
title,
just even the way you say
that's
his
our
name,
clickbaity.
Boom.
That's our clickbaity title. Is like, it's safe to say Hitler.
It is.
Dang. That's intense.
Hitler's my safe word.
Oh gosh, dude.
I'm sorry. I'll keep clean.
You know, I love this conversation we're having. I think, and I was going to get to this later, but I think I might as well just talk about it now. So let's talk about this aggression, masculinity stuff. I think one of the greatest examples, not to toot my own horn, all right, because there was a lot of things in this situation that I'm not going to get into now. One of the last interactions that Kyle and I had when we were both working at the same church together.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about any of the lead up to it. I was pissed. And he had just come back from vacation. And his kids were at a neighbor where I was living at the time, my parents' house. They were there. And so they were coming back. And I was coming back from work early. And I was pissed. And I saw them there.
Yeah.
And I pulled over. I got out of my car. And walking up to Kyle, I didn't know if I was going to punch him or hug him. Up until the point that we hugged, I did not know. And I'm pretty sure he's a smart guy. You're a smart guy.
Thanks.
I'm pretty sure you probably picked up on that at some level.
We were both pretty amped, man.
We were, it was incredible that we didn't duke it out, I think.
Yeah.
And what then happened was we ended up embracing each other.
Yep.
And I cried. I bawled on Kyle's shoulder because I was just in such a state of disbelief of everything that had been occurring. And again, this isn't all on Kyle at all. This is just the entirety of the situation was completely trash. And so it was this, if we ever talk about, the whole idea of like men don't cry, I'm sure if anyone came up to me at that point and made fun of me for crying, I'd probably have beaten the dog shit out of them and then got back to crying and hugging Kyle.
Get it out of the way.
Get it out of the way.
Get back to work.
That's right. Get back to work. So it's like when we talk about, I think this idea of what is masculine and what is not, what's considered, in all respects, what makes you or what generally people view as like, you're not a man. Men don't do that. It's like, absolutely we do. And the idea that you're like, well, men don't do that. Like if that is directing your reaction, I think actually that might be appropriate. I'm not quite sure. I have to think about that more before I say it.
Good luck. You said it.
I said it. If that's what's dictating your every move, it's just, a guy wouldn't do that. A man wouldn't do that. It's like, No, I think a man would.
Okay.
I think a man has that.
I'll challenge you on that statement.
All right.
Not because I disagree with it, but because you do. You just a minute ago said that you would not call the men who engage in toxic masculinity men because they're boys.
Yeah.
So please elaborate. Why?
Because I think being a man is a state of being.
Okay.
It's not what you do, but it's what you do repeatedly, how you own up to what you do, and how you choose to move forward.
Okay.
And I think that when we're talking about being a man, for me, when I look at it, if I had to just say one thing about being a man, it's not the only thing at all, and it's not even arguably the most important thing, but one of the main things I think of when I think of all examples of people I would consider a manly man, these great, true masculine males in my life. They are compassionate. They hold you accountable and hold themselves accountable. They're relatively transparent, but there is obviously an air of privacy, as there always should be. And they treat you as an equal and generally aren't talking down to you. There might be times where it's like, yeah, they're encouraging you, or they have to, just be straight with you, but
rank
it's
is not always the same. I think it's fair to say that you can be at a different level at times.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And everybody is. I just think that, when it comes to being a man, own up to your past, own up to your mistakes, move forward from them, seek to do no harm, and try your best to learn and grow and bring as many people along with you as you can.
I would say these are all traits of just a decent human being. Like these are ideals that we should all aspire to.
Right. Well, that's the thing too.
Mm. If
every boy was a man,
you're never gonna have the perfect world where everybody follows every good ideal and none of the bad ones. But I mean, if we produce more good in the world than bad, I think we've done well.
Yeah. Well, what if we had a let's just say a community of 100 people, and however many men are there, whatever, however many male or females. If every single one of those men held themselves accountable to their own actions, owned up to where they messed up, strove to set boundaries for themselves, not out of fear of a mob, not out of fear, but just out of trying to live up to their, I'm going to say code of honor. It's not quite the right word. I can't think of it right now. It's
Conduct?
Not ethics either. Conduct, yes, but like...
Their code.
Yeah, their code.
Their code.
Of just respecting people.
Hmm.
What kind of world, or what kind of community do you think that would be?
Well, I mean, that's a healthier community. If you are treating others with the respect that they're due, that's ultimately for the net benefit of everybody in that community. And
I wouldn't even say respect, actually. I take that back. Some of it's respect, because I think respect is earned and honor is given. And you earn respect from giving honor and then being a man of your word, letting your yes be yes and your no be no. And so let's put that out there as more of the, yes, there's respect in it and giving people their due respect, but giving people more respect than they deserve. Because it's very easy, especially when you're in a situation where it's easy, especially when you're emotionally charged, because like it or not, I'm a very emotionally charged person. As I know you saw at Yard House on the line.
We'll bleep that.
And you just saw. No, that's fine. I want people to know. But it's very, very... I don't even know where I was going with that.
Well,
I don't know where I was coming from, I should say.
Let me chime in there. You used a great example, which was our interaction that particular day, that particular night. I think it was evening, whatever.
Oh, no, it was the afternoon. I got sent home early that day.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things, about that whole interaction that are really, really, really diamonds in the rough.
Mm.
You and I had, I think, basically done the same thing to each other.
Yeah.
At different times.
Yeah.
And we both were motivated ideologically at the time. And the embrace we had was really great because you and I were both hyper aggressive.
Yeah.
And assertive.
See two gorillas charging at each other.
Yeah.
Just end up hugging it.
Anyway.
I think it was expected.
It was really good. And I remember that had that not happened, I don't think we'd be here right now. We wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah.
But both of us, to the degree that we can psychologically handle it, are awake and aware when it comes to our own dysfunction. And that's the key. And we're talking about a lot of idealistic things, and not all of them are achievable. You can scrap and strive for these things, and you should, right? But like, in definition, you're never going to get there. Right. And there's a degree to which you can psychologically handle that, and there's a degree to which you can't. So like when I've worked with people in addiction, it's like, man, let's look at this thing as full in the face as we can, and then no longer than we can, because any longer and any fuller, and it's going to break you. And then we'll deal with what we saw, and then we'll come back to it again. But it is victory by degrees, and it's piece by piece, and it's a battle hard won. Yeah. And I don't know if you remember this, but let's do another part of that story where there's lots of tears. I remember sometime after coming to your home and not only just apologizing to you, because I had already apologized to you at this point, but I apologized to your parents for the potential ramifications of my choices in that situation. And I mean, you don't get a lot of opportunities to be that accountable.
I with that whole situation, and you came over and, talked to my parents, and, I wanted to say, and it's weird because as I was trying to formulate this and trying to figure out how I wanted to say it, because I think obviously there's a point of like being able to look back and say like, yeah, that, that stuff, like it sucked how it's a weird conundrum of like how it went down, the factors involved in it, but then like you look at like where we are today and it's like, well, we're both in a better place. So, but there is an aspect of it, and I'm not sure exactly what it is. Like I couldn't put it in a direct, like, I'm sorry for this, I'm sorry, but I am just sorry for that entire situation. I'm sorry for the part that I had to play in that. And I think, one of the big things is you were raising valid questions that at the time, and I still strongly feel the same way in a weird sense, but I've expanded my acceptance of legitimate questions being asked and disbelief or whatever. Like I've expanded that acceptance of being able to look at someone and be like, you know what? And especially in that context, being able to look at someone and just say like, that's a very valid question. And so I just wanted to apologize for just all of that we had.
So because of that. We're good. You and I have been great for years, man.
Yeah. Well, I know we are, but I wanted to publicly do it too, and nothing more public than this.
I was wondering. I see it now. I was wondering because in a sense I was like, nobody knows what you're talking about right now.
They don't need to.
And I was like, this hopefully doesn't alienate anybody, but I accept. And you and I have both got a lot of apologies between us, and you've certainly fielded mine, and we've got a lot of mutual forgiveness going on. So I love you, man, and we've been cool for a long time. And now we're cool on camera.
Now we're cool on camera.
For our 20 subscribers, which is our current
20
count.
subscribers.
It's okay because now we have his face on here, though. That marketing.
Pick a good thumbnail. That's all I'm asking.
I'll make one of your Instagram.
You'll make it in paint. I want my name in wingdings, man. That's what I want.
There it is. I actually had to make a couple of our thumbnails in paint. They didn't totally suck because I used photos, but still.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But that's fine now. I've got my Adobe suite.
Okay.
Right,
so we kind of, we answered these questions and dove into a lot of things, and I want to be able to get Kyle out of here before we've been on camera talking for about an hour.
It's a little more than that, yeah.
And obviously, Kyle, I want to have you back on because there's so much, not just this topic, so much we could talk about. So much there's just insight and disagreements and agreements and different perspectives that I want us to have those conversations, all three of us, obviously, about. And this is for all of us, but if you had to choose one quality, one thing that, whether it be stereotypically in our understanding of masculinity, that is pushed to the side, kind of as how people view it and talk about it, or maybe overlooked in terms of a good masculine quality. And I kind of rambled off a few different general ones, but what do you feel like people most often miss the mark on masculinity? I guess where they miss the mark the most. Does that question make sense?
Yes. Would you like a moment to think?
Yeah, go ahead if
Okay.
you wouldn't mind answering it, because I to clarify for me. Do you mean what is the most missed mark for us societally, or what is lost most frequently for men personally? Because the two are very different, I think.
Yeah. I think I'm going to say men personally, and the only reason I picked that one
Okay.
over societally is
Okay.
because I think society is impacted by what is lost personally, just on a great scale.
Okay. All right. You go ahead and answer, and then I'm formulating a response right now.
All right. Well, I would say that the big thing is empathy, because we miss so much. Part of forcing other people to follow your not coda, that's musical. Your code is an inability to understand that not everybody is that person. Not everybody is you. If you are able to recognize the virtues of somebody else that you do not have, or their individuality outside of your own self, then you have taken a step towards preventing others, preventing that person, preventing yourself from spreading more of that toxicity.
It's kind of like across the table.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So self-plug on our own channel.
So, yeah. Make sure to subscribe. What are you thinking, Kyle?
Yeah. There's a lot of words for it. One thing that men lose in life is purpose. It's meaning. For so many reasons, and I don't want to necessarily move into a diagnosis on that because I've got a lot of ideas, but
Right.
I think that men lose. I don't want to simplify it down to like men lose their North Star and then they don't know which way they're going.
Right.
I think it's more complicated. I think men lose that which is most important in life through a series that's not right. Purpose is often eroded for men and for women, but since we're talking about men, purpose becomes eroded over time. You work for a really long time towards what you think is your goal, and then you achieve it or you don't. And a lot of times, whether or not you achieve it or not, you become disenfranchised with whatever the outcome is.
Yeah.
So let's play this out. Maybe the person you married isn't who you thought they were. Okay, well, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to move on from that. Maybe you raised a kid and that kid just totally wasted everything you gave him, the prodigal son metaphor. All right, it takes a lot to recover from that. It really does. It takes a lot as human beings for us to move on from disappointment and bitterness and feeling disenfranchised. If you as a human being, but as a man specifically, because that's what we're talking about today, can maintain a sense of purpose and meaning in your life, then that the direction, the heading, all of those things won't stop you. Because your journey changes and your destination changes over time, and really whether or not you ever reach a destination remains to be seen, because people just don't stop going places or not going, depending on which way the inertia is moving or not moving. But man, purpose and meaning, whatever you want to call it, I have noticed does not call men forward after it dies. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to bring that back. So I've frequently, for myself, speaking personally, sought a lot of purpose. So really searched for meaning in my life, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But when one meaning dies, you got to construct a new one, and you got to fight for it. You got to fight towards it, because that's hard won, and you got to hold on to it once you win it.
Yeah.
So
I think kind of juggling between two. The first one is the ability and willingness to apologize.
That's a big one. A big one, but it's a small one, isn't it?
Yeah.
How many people do we know, and just out of everybody we know, who just have never apologized for anything in their life, or at least in our relationship? And it's not even that they did anything wrong to us, but just like they just don't apologize, or they find it so difficult to just say
it means
sorry,
you have to accept that you did something wrong,
and that you aren't perfect, and that whatever you did wasn't good.
If that's your view of yourself, that you're perfect, then that is impossible to apologize, because that's accepting fault.
Right. Exactly.
Well,
and that goes back to identity, actually.
Yeah. Well, and it's true that you can be wrong about something, but also have been right about something else.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I can apologize for this % that I own, and I can very much not apologize for this other %.
Right.
And those two shouldn't be said in the same statement.
Mm-hmm.
No, you get in some trouble.
No,
Actually, I'm right about this, but I'm sorry I insulted your dead grandfather.
But
that was too soon.
There's no I'm sorry buts, and I know that's not what you're saying, but
Right.
for the listeners, watching.
But that's still an important point.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. There's
tact.
I've taken this new approach to apologies where I say, listen, I am sorry for anything wrong that I've done, real or perceived. Because it doesn't really cost me anything to apologize for what they thought I did.
Right.
So it's like, all right, man, I'm sorry for what I know I did wrong, and whatever else there might be in your mind. And it came because I remember trying to write an apology letter and saying within it, like, hey, I'm sorry for what I know I did wrong. I hope you understand that some of what you believe about me isn't true. And I realized that, man, that feels weak.
Yeah.
Like you just took it away as soon as you gave it?
It feels weak. And you shouldn't say it if it feels weak. So basically what I wrote instead was, I'm sorry for the part that I've played that has been wrong, and I'm sorry for any wrongs that I've done, real or perceived. Because you're not calling anybody a liar when you say that.
Right.
But you are owning the fact that you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. None of us has a corner on the truth.
Yeah.
We don't know for sure exactly what happened at all levels of any particular situation.
That's good.
That's a note. There you go.
They're right there.
That's
good. The other one before we close out, I was thinking of, and we were talking about therapy a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And we briefly mentioned it. I think sometimes it's hard to ask for help. And I think sometimes it's hard to know that. Because I found, at least in recent months, something I'm struggling with, or something I was dealing with, or something I didn't know how to handle, or I just wasn't, like, it's really easy when a situation all of a sudden occurs, I shut myself off emotionally from it. I'm like, all right, just gotta get through this. Yeah. And you get through it, but you don't really talk about it. You don't really know if it's even okay to get help, if you should, how to do that. And so I think developing that sense of us, and that comes back to like community too, and identity, and be able to, have those people that you trust. But that's something I would count that second to definitely the apology, really, the what we just talked about. So, Dylan, do you have anything? Dylan or Kyle, do you have anything else you want to talk about before we close out and get out of this 100,000 degree heat?
I think that, and yeah, seriously, it's 110 degrees right now where we are.
We have the AC.
We've got AC. It's out. That's outside, but I'm misty. I think everything that we've discussed today is incredibly valid for anybody. We are speaking to it in the framework of masculinity because we often find that that's got some more danger to it, just because it's such a big topic and it's toxic masculinity. You don't really hear much about toxic femininity or whatever else.
It's not the mainstream conversation.
No, and therefore it is so critical to tackle that head on. And we've only dipped our toes in the water here. There's so much more to be said, but all of this advice is good for absolutely anybody who needs to hear it.
Yeah.
Be that you or somebody else. Don't force it on someone else. Just help open their eyes if that's somebody else that you care about who's not quite getting it.
Don't cut off their eyelids either. That doesn't count as opening someone's eyes.
Well, it does, but
okay, you're right.
They might get blinded, so it's like it actually does. But and also that's an aggressive maneuver.
Truth and fact.
Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
There you go.
Don't be part of the problem.
Yeah,
and I think that'll.
In the comments, don't be part of the problem. Down below.
Really,
that's where the problem occurs.
Yes, if you disagree with anything that we've said, we'd love to hear from you. Do not be a troll.
There you go. Well, no, I'm just saying, that's
get at me.
That's where it really appeals.
I ain't gonna hug you and cry. All right.
Yeah.
Just put it that way.
Yeah. We'd rather have you on the podcast than just saying, well, in the comments. It's danger.
Yeah.
So, Kyle, thank you for taking time out of your day, your Sunday. I know how draining church can be, especially from a ministry perspective. Not in a bad way, just it's tiring.
It can be, yeah.
So I thank you for coming on, for being willing to talk about this stuff. Thank you to Tani for letting Kyle come on and talk about stuff, and being able to have those conversations. Really would appreciate any likes, subscriptions, any of that. This is exciting. I look forward to having you back on, Kyle. And this has been Kyle and Dylan, or Dylan and Kyle, or
I'm outnumbered basically.
Kyle, or Dylan,
There's
Kyle,
two Kyles
whatever.
and a Dylan.
2 Kyles and a Dylan. 2.5 and a, 2.5 Kyles.
Who's a half?
Jeez.
You just unwound all the conversation we had.
Now.
Oh, Lord.
But thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Across the Table, and we look forward to having a conversation next time with you.
Yeah, looking forward to it too. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right, see y'all next time. We got more coming.
Get at me.
Bye.